Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by today. It's been an adventure trying to get this video just right. I had to film it in parts as best as I could. More so because if I hadn't filmed it in parts, there would be a decent bit of pausing because I did step away a couple times to let like the watercolor dry and stuff like that. But I did my best to do a simple and easy to follow skin tutorial, so I hope that it does help you guys. I also sped up the drawing and inking quite a bit, as well as the painting of the hair at the end. I didn't do a tutorial on the hair or the eyes this time around, but I tried to get in as much possible without making a super long video. So I do hope that you guys enjoy this video. I do hope that it also helps you guys out. I was trying my best to just make it as simplistic as possible, but realized there were times where I would kind of drag on myself. So I did my best to speed up the parts where I would kind of be focused on painting, or I would start to kind of ramble on, because I did want to make this video not an hour long, obviously, when most of it is just like painting and talking. So I hope that this helps you guys. Bear with me, I'm still new to watercolor. I know I keep saying that all the time, but it is still something that like I get nervous sitting down to paint. So I hope that you guys enjoy this. As soon as the painting starts, I do go over the list of colors that I use to try and help you guys. I do list the paintbrush numbers that I use, so I hope it helps. Alright, so to go through the supplies I am using today for the watercolors, I am using the Winsor & Newton Cotman 24 pack. You can see some husky fur up in there, my bad. I do have a fresh palette that I have set off to the side from my Koi watercolor set. But for today, because I am more familiar with the Winsor & Newton one, that will be the one that I am using. And for the colors that I will use to start off, it is going to be the Indian Red or the 003, or if you have a color similar to it, and then the yellow ochre color, or if you have a color similar to that one as well. So don't feel like you have to be limited to just my palette or my colors. If you have something very similar to it, I recommend, you know, trying those out as well. I'm gonna try and give you guys like a simple, basic kind of how I just do like the skin tones and everything, and how I build up. So it will, at some points I will speed up the camera, and at some points I will slow it down and talk to you guys. So I hope that you guys enjoy this tutorial, and we'll see how it goes, right? All right, so diving in, I have placed a little bit of just plain clean water into my palette. And what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna grab some of that Indian Red that I showed you at the beginning, and I'm just gonna get my brush nice and full of that color and really just kind of create a good little bit. I like to have enough to where what I tend to do is I'll grab and I'll push some of it into another palette, and I'll make different colors, but primarily starting with the Indian Red color. So now I'm gonna clean off my brush just enough, add some of that water to it, and then I'm going to pull some of that yellow ochre color. And make sure I get a good bit on the brush there, like you guys can see. And I'm gonna mix that and create like a nice, almost like a dark orange color, I guess you could say. So depending on how you like it, you can add more yellow, you can add more red, you can even add some browns if you want, or some purple, but this is kind of where I tend to leave it. I might add just a bit more of the red in there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm using a 8 round brush, so it's one of the bigger brushes. I'm going to take a good little bit, I'm going to place it right underneath the eye, and then what I'm going to do is clean off my brush, get some moisture on there, and I'm going to pull all that color. And then just start spreading it around. Now I am going to let that dry for a bit before I go on with the next layer. Alright, so now that my first layer has gotten nice and dry, as you can see, I am going to now take a number 3 brush. This is the one that comes with the watercolor kit, but I actually like it quite a bit. It's actually a very nice brush in my opinion. Not that I'm like super formal with brushes or anything like that, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this darker color, right? The one that has a little bit more of the Indian red mixed with it, and I'm actually going to add a bit of this purple lake color. It's kind of like a pinkish purple, or if you have something similar to it. And I'm just going to add not a whole lot, just enough to kind of give this a nice like purple twinge. And I'm gonna make sure to add just a bit more of the Indian red to it. And also I'm going to add the slightest bit of the intense blue right there. Not very much of this, but this is just to kind of add like almost a shadow tint to the coloring. So I only just barely dipped the end of my brush and already it changed the color significantly. And so with that, I'm gonna actually try and thin it out a bit more with some more water, because I don't want this to come out super dark right away. I want this to be kind of thin and something that I can build up upon, if that makes sense. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, and that's why I like to switch to a smaller brush for this, is I like to kind of start small. So dab a little in an area that you want the shadowings and then pull that color. And I think it just gives like a really nice like shadowed tinted color. And this is where I'm just gonna go through and add my shadows wherever I like them. And if I want to fade them out a bit more, which like right in here I will, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna take and clean my brush and then dip it in some clean water. I have 2 cups, and I'm gonna just spread some of that. Now my brush was a bit wetter than I would have cared for, so I'm gonna take a bit of paper towel and I'm just gonna dab a little bit. And I just kind of like to try and slowly build these shadow tints. So because that area is nice and wet still, I can go through and add it and then just lightly dab it so I get kind of the essence of the shadow that's there without the intense pigment, I guess. I don't know how to best describe that. And for the areas that I do want more intense, I'm more apt to just leave the full color pigment there. So it gives a nice, it's more of like, to me, like subtle shading rather than going real intense right away. And if you want to build up on it, you can. I like to kind of do this before I add really a lot of the details to the face. Like if I decide to add like the blush or like freckles, which I do add pretty often because I like freckles. I think they're adorable. But yeah, I just go around and kind of shadow the face. We're also going to shadow the ear. I go just up to the tip there and then kind of wrap it around. And more so, I will get a bit more intense. So once that kind of dries, I'll come back to it and add another layer towards this like center part to just add a bit more of a intensity to it. Now this one I did go a bit different. I haven't actually filled in the lips yet. I didn't even really outline them completely, and I know I didn't outline the hair. A big part of that is because I wanted to actually just do like full watercolor with the hair. So you can still see the pencil that I left, the pencil marks and everything. And I definitely did that on purpose. And the nice thing, the thing that I've come to really appreciate with watercolors is even if my watercolors dry out, like you can see some of the edges are already drying out, I can just add water and still use the same color that I had. And that also helps with, that's why I had to choose a clean palette, because a lot of my skin tones are already like pre-mixed on other palettes. And so it was one of those where for doing the tutorial I kind of had to reiterate for myself what all I did to mix. Like I remember to an extent, but you don't remember like exact proportions. So it was just one of those where for me I was like, well, you know, might as well reiterate. So anytime I feel like I put too much color down or the brush was wetter than I meant for it to be, I will use my paper towel to kind of just dab that away. And I think that's one of the reasons why, like when I'm doing color or watercolor like this, I actually try and have like, not like a roll of paper towels next to me, but I have probably like 3 or 4 that are specifically for like the dabbing off of color, just in case I need it. So as you can see, there is definitely more depth coming to the face itself now. So hopefully this is helping so far. And that's the whole reason why I wanted to thin out this color in particular, because I didn't want it to be like a super opaque, super intense color right away. So I really wanted to have that nice, like light ability to kind of slowly build up. And so now that ear's dried a bit, I'm gonna go in and make the shadows a bit more intense. I try to keep ears pretty simplistic because you can get all kinds of like detail with the ears if you want, but really like all ears are different shapes, different like patterns on the inside. So it's one of those where I just kind of keep it simple and kind of have fun with it, but try and build more of the dimension to an ear with the shading, if that makes sense. So I just, you know, and keeping it simple helps to make it easier to quickly draw it up instead of like, I think that's why I'm not really into like doing realistic drawings. I have done them in the past, and I do like enjoy seeing the way that they turn out and everything, but they just require so much patience from me, and I just can't. Like, and at the same time, like I love kind of creating like my own characters, my own design, or in a sense of just saying it as having my own style, you know, like it's nice to be able to have something that's more so unique to you, you know, and it might be similar to other artist styles, but there's no way to be exact, you know, and I think like that's how I really came to learn, is not by copying other artists' pieces, but by looking at their artwork and trying to create it in my own style. So kind of like doing like the draw this in your style challenge, but more so really just trying to learn in that way of like, all right, well, how should this go? How should this sit? Like the little stuff like that, like, oh, how do they shape their eyes, you know? And you know, you might have eyes that you like from one artist, but a nose that you like from another artist, and then lips even that you like from a completely different artist. So it all kind of just adds up, and eventually you grow into a way of drawing this stuff for yourself and figuring out how you like to draw it for yourself. And that's kind of just what happened for me. Like I started drawing it like in certain ways. Like I had taught or learned through like YouTube and stuff that like, oh, you can draw the eye using three distinct lines to get the shape and then go from there. And then like drawing the nose, doing this and stuff like that. And then just kind of building up for it. And eventually I kind of started just doing stuff my own way. Like especially the lips. Like the lips I've never really followed anyone's kind of pattern towards. I just kind of always went with like the cupid's bow and then the little divot in the middle and just went from there. And it's always very much so been fairly similar to being the same. Not much of a distinction there. So right now I am pulling from my straight Indian red color, but I'm adding a bit more water to it. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm thinning it out, trying to thin it out over on the side here, so that I can start building up a bit of color on the lips. And then also I'm gonna start doing kind of like a blush color with that. So just really taking more of a stronger red toned color. And I'm trying to add plenty of water to it so that I can just slowly build. I don't want my brush to be too wet, so I'm gonna dry it off just a hair. And then just slowly, maybe a little more pigment than that, adding some red. I am leaving these spaces on the lips to try and kind of pre-create like highlight for the lips. And I can't remember what video I watched that said that it's kind of an easier way of creating highlight, but at the same time, like that's what you're supposed to do with watercolor, is like the lighter colors you leave purposely lighter. There's a lot of water on my brush on that tip. So I'm gonna just go through with my little piece of paper towel and dabble it. And I think that like the thing that I like now is like I haven't really done anything crazy layer wise to the face, but you can really kind of see a lot of the color kind of coming through. Now this is something I will do. So I got the brush nice and wet and I dabbed it under the eye like I did before, but what I'm doing is I'm kind of just dotting the brush, and then really quickly I'm going to go through and just kind of dab up some of that excess water, and then also go ahead and keep dotting with the same brush. So I'm adding more so like a nice twinge of color, and I will build up on that. So I'm getting the brush nice and wet, and you can kind of dot it however you want. This is just what I do, so if you have another way you like doing this, or if you know another way that's easier for you to do this, go for it. This is what I kind of figured out for myself that I like to do, and how I kind of like to go about adding a little bit more texture on the face. Hopefully I'm not shaking everything too much, because I realized with all the dotting that my table had started shaking just a little bit. And it's very subtle, I know, but once that kind of dries and then you go through and you add a bit more, like it's not nearly as bad. And I have to admit, I don't clean my brush very often, especially when I'm doing the face, because I'm using all the same colors that I use on the face. So I'm taking a bit more of that shadow color, and I'm just kind of deepen up some of these spots that I really want to have like a nice dark shadow. So like under the chin, a little bit more under the nose. I'm not gonna go too much, but that'll probably actually be it for me for under the nose. And then any place that I kind of just want to have like a nice shadow color. Alright, so now that I have that nice and dry, I forgot to put it on camera, but I took a small little bit of this Payne's gray color and I just mixed it with my already light Indian red color that I had, and it is going to add a bit more of a like earthy kind of tone to, I mean, you'll see. So we're gonna go ahead and do the exact same thing that we've been doing. And the reason I like to use the Payne's gray is it kind of deepens the Indian red like just enough without going too dark of a color, like without getting too much of like the gray or like solid black kind of tone to it, to where it almost looks more muddy than keeping the nice red browns. And I think that's why I like using gray over mixing it with like black. And that works for just about any skin tone, as it kind of just adds a nice like shadowed tint to it without being too intense of a color. And that is really what I kind of like to look for as far as color wise. Sometimes I will build more like I am right now, just to kind of get the twinge that I want. And also sometimes what I like to do, which I'm going to do, is I'm going to take it and push it into some of these shadow areas to give those like a nice red tint and also darken them up a bit. And really, that is essentially how I do the skin. I'm going to add a little bit more to the lips, give them a bit more pigment. I am going to add just a touch bit more of that Payne's Gray to this color. Oop, added a bit more than I meant to, but at the same time, that's okay because I'm not going to use very much of this. I'll mix it very well. I'm going to go in and kind of just add a nice little darker shadow. And try and leave yourself some, because what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take a bit of water, not too much, add it to there, try and blow off my brush just a little bit, and I'm going to spread this right across the upper eyelid. And this is to add my little bit of shadow to the eye. And then I'm going to go ahead and do blue eyes this time around, and I'm going to use the cerulean blue and the cold or intense blue mixed with a bit of the Payne's Gray. So for my light color, I'm going to do the cerulean blue, and then for my shadow color, so it's going to be two different little water blobs here, or paint blobs, I'm going to do those two.